Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Principles of Macroeconomics, lecture number 18. The course code is Econ 102 and the topic is circular flow of the national income. The lecture outline: introduction, the two-sector economy, simple two-sector circular flow of the national income. The reference book is Principles of Macroeconomics by Gregory Menkeeff. The simple circular flow. There are two observations. In every economic exchange, the seller receives exactly the same amount that the buyer spends. So the main concept of the circular flow of an economy, of a simple economy, is that there are buyers and there are sellers, or in other words, there is the business community and there are the households. So the business community or the sellers or the producers, they are providing the products, the goods and services to the households, and on the other hand, the households or the buyers, they need those goods and services for the consumption, and they are supposed to buy these products, goods and services from the sellers. So how the circular flow takes place? The circular flow takes place in the form that the buyers or the households, they spend money on these goods and services, and this exact amount of money goes to the sellers or the producers for which they provide the goods and services. So in every economic exchange, the sellers receives exactly the same amount that the buyers spend. So since we are looking at a very simple economic model, so over here we are not discussing any leakages from the system or any injections from the outside. We are also assuming that the households, they are not saving anything. At the same time, the business community, they are not investing anything. So in all these leakages, injections have been assumed to be constant. This is one of the assumptions. So once they are constant or assumed to be constant, so then there is a simple circular flow where the buyers spend and the sellers receive. Number two, the goods and services flow in one direction and the money payments flow in the other direction. So the goods or the products or the services, they flow from the producer's side to the households, whereas the money which is being spent on these goods and services, they flow in the other direction towards the sellers or the producers. The simple circular flow, profits explained. Question arises that why is profit a cost of production? The answer is that profits are the return the entrepreneurs receive for the risk they incur when organizing the productive activities. So profit is also sort of can be considered as the cost of production, because for these profits, the firms, they take risk by producing the goods and services, and the risk that they take when organizing the productive activities, it gives them profits for the organization or for the businesses. So the profits can also be considered as the cost of production. Why? Because the producers, they take risk to achieve or to gain those profits. Final goods and services. the goods and services that are at their final stage of production and will not be transformed into yet another goods or services. So when we are explaining the circular flow of the national income, we are only considering the final goods and services, and the final goods and services are those goods and services which are in their final form or final stage. And in other words, we can say that these goods or services will not be used in the production of other goods and services, because if the goods and services they are used in the production of other goods and services, then we consider these as the intermediate goods and services. So over here, for simplification, we have assumed that the goods and services are in their final shape or final stage. So let us look diagrammatically at the circular flow. As we just explained, there is a business sector and there's household. The business sector is supposed to produce the products, and they are supposed to produce the services as well. As we know that the services is an important part of our economy. In the modern economic system, in the modern economies, services contributes almost 50% or more than 50% of our GDP or the gross domestic product or our national income. So the business sector, they provide the goods and services, and these final goods and services, they flow from the business sector to the household sector. As we know that the household sector, there are consumers, and consumers, as we know, are those people who are involved in the consumption. So for consumption, they require the final goods, consumer goods, and the services. So this is one flow that happens in the simple circular flow. That is, the final goods and services, they move from the business sector to the household. The product markets, transactions in which households buy goods. Now, we have included the monetary phenomena in this flow. As you can see that from the business sector, in the circular flow of the national income, the final goods and services, they flow towards the households. And for these goods and services which these households receive, these goods and services, the household pay to the producers or firms or the sellers or the businesses. So that is considered as the dollar value of the output, which is equal to total monetary value of all the final goods and the services. The total income. What is the total income? It includes the wages, the rent, the interest, and the profit. The wages which are being paid to the labor, the rent which is being paid to the different, for example, the building which is being hired, and interest is paid on the capital, and the profit is the total income of the entrepreneur or the risk which has been taken, as we explained in the first few slides, that profit is because of the risk which is being taken by the entrepreneur, and that is why it was also considered as the cost of the production. So this is the total income, which includes the wages, the rents, interest, and the profits. So from the businesses sector, the amount which flowed in this direction, which was spending by the household, that amount flows back to the households in the form of total income, that is the wages which are being given to the labor force, the rent, the interest paid on the capital, and the profits on the entrepreneurship. The factor market. The transactions in which businesses buy the resources. So, why these amount or the total incomes, which is wage plus the rents plus the interest and plus the profits, why the question is why they flow from the business sector to the household sector. The reason for this is that if you look at this diagram, that the factors of production is something which is flowing from the household to the business sector. What are those factors of production? That is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial activity. So all these things, the four things, they are considered as the factors of production, and these factors of production are flowing from the household sector to the business sector. As we know that production is basically the combination of the different factors of production, that is the labor force is involved, the land is involved, and land includes the building as well as the other things, and capital is involved, which includes money and the entrepreneurial activity. So for these factors of production, the business sector does a payment in the form of the wages, rents, interest, and the profits. So this type of flow in the simple two-sector economy is considered as a flow which is taking place in the factors market. So the circular flow of income and the product, now we have the complete picture of the circular flow of the national income in a simple two-sector economy. By now it should be clear to you what is simple two-sector economy. An economy where there are only two sectors for simplification, and these sectors are the household sector and the business sector. So the household sector, they can also be called as the consumers, or the buyers, whereas the business sector, they can also be called as the industrial side or the production side, the producers or the sellers. So there are two types of flows which take place in a simple two-sector circular flow of the national income. The two flows are, one is the product market and the other one is the factor market. So as far as the factor market is concerned, we have just explained it in the previous slide, that there is a flow of the factors of production from the household towards the business side, and these factors of production includes the land, the labor, capital, and entrepreneurial activity. In reply to these factors of production, the business sector, they pay the total income in the form of the wages, rents, interest, and the profits. So this part of the circular flow is considered as the circular flow of the factor market. On the other hand, we have the circular flow of the product market in the upper part of the diagram. What happens in the product market? That the final goods and services which are produced by using these factors of production, the final goods and services are produced, these final goods and services, they flow from the business sector towards the household sector. So when the consumers receive these final goods and the final services, in reply to that or in response to that, or as a result of that, the household sector, they pay for the final goods. As we know that whenever we buy something in the market, whether it's goods or whether it's the services, so we have to pay a certain amount as a price for those goods and services. So these prices or this income which is being spent by the household is considered as the expenditures on the goods and services which is being done by the households. So this expenditure becomes the income of the business community, or it becomes the income of the sellers, and this income which is being transferred again to the households in the form of wages, rents, interest, and profits. So let us quickly go through this diagram again, which is a very simple two-sector national circular flow of the national income. First of all, the business sector, they hire the different factors of production from the households. These factors of production are used to produce the final goods and services which go towards the household sector. This is one flow which is taking place. Then the second thing, when the businesses receive these factors of production, they pay a reward to them in the form of wages, rents, interest, and profits. Once these are paid, these rewards are received by the household, and they spend these income as on the goods and services which are being purchased by these households on purchasing different products and services. So on one hand, something which is the income of the business sector is actually the expenditure of the households. So if you recall, in our first few slides, we just mentioned that anything which is spent by the households will be exactly equal to what is being received by the sellers. So it is proved over here that the expenditures which are being done by the households will become the income of the business sector. So if you calculate the national income by the income approach, or by the product approach, or by the expenditure approach, the result for all these methods technically should be same. So if you calculate the national income with the three approaches, that is the expenditure approach or the income approach or the product approach, and the result is not same, there is difference in the values, so then you are having some problem in the methodologies which are being used. So now there is a question: why must the total income be identical to the dollars values of the total output? The answer to that question is that every transaction simultaneously involves an expenditure and a receipt. So this is the point we just explained, that what is expenditure? Anything which is spent by the households becomes the income or receipt of the business. On the other hand, anything which is spent by the business sector, which is this amount, is or should be equal to the receipt or income of the household sector, which is this amount. So the circular flow, basically in the circular flow, the expenditures will always be equal to the income. Thank you so much, students. I hope you have understood the lecture. If you have any question, you can post the question on the KCMS account. I will try to answer them. Best of luck.